Dr. Paul Murphy.
Thanks, Laskin Corla. Taoiseach, the nightmare in Gaza is worsening day after day, hour after hour. No water, no food, no fuel for the hospitals, no electricity, no basics. And the bombs raining down at an increasing intensity. In the last 24 hours, more than 700 people have been killed, bringing a total of over 5,000, including over 2,000 children. And you have what is really a sick joke in terms of 15 trucks entering Gaza, when on a regular day you would have 500 trucks a day going in. So the starvation policies of Israel continues. And this may be about to get even worse. It may be unimaginable to people that it could be worse, but it could be even worse. You have huge numbers of Israeli troops on the border getting ready for a ground invasion. The Defence Minister has told them you will soon see Gaza from the inside. That would mean not thousands of civilian casualties, it would mean tens of thousands, and it would potentially mean a new Nakba, a new displacement, forcing people out of their homes permanently, or attempted to do it permanently, for over 1 million people, if not over 2 million people. I don't know if you remember, Taoiseach, but on the 20th of March 2003, it was known as Day X. It was the day that the war on Iraq started. And people right across the country, from schools, from colleges and in works, walked out in protest and went to the city centre to protest. I think we will need to do the same again if there's a ground invasion. Head to the Israeli embassy and demand that the ambassador is expelled.
I want to thank the deputies for their comments. I think it's important that when we engage with our European partners, 27 member states in the European Union, that we always try to understand the positions that they're coming from. We may disagree, we may criticise each other, we may compromise, but shouting, pointing the finger, that really doesn't work in international affairs or in forums such as the European Council. And we do have to understand where different countries are coming from. Every country sees the situation in the Middle East through its own historical experience. We certainly do. It's one of the many reasons why we identify with the Palestinian people and support their quest for statehood, because we see certain parallels between what Ireland experienced and what they experience. But we also need to understand that other European countries might see it differently, given the horrendous treatment of Jewish people in Europe for centuries, culminating in the events of the 1930s and the 1940s, causing so many to flee to Israel, their ancestral homeland. And we also have to bear in mind that many countries much more recently have been at the receiving end of very serious Islamic terrorism, killing people on their streets. The attack on the music festival in Israel was not the first Islamic terrorist attack on a music event. It's happened in France, it's happened in Britain, it's happened in other places too. And we need to understand that other people will see things in a somewhat different way than we would. If we can't do that, then we're not going to persuade anyone of anything. We'll just be taking an isolated position. But what I will do on Thursday and Friday, as I've done in the past 2 weeks, is to bring the Irish perspectives to the table, to say that Europe cannot have double standards when it comes to human rights. We cannot say one thing about President Putin's actions in Ukraine and then take a totally different position when it comes to violations of international law happening in other places. And also, I think we need to consider the impact on Ukraine. Ireland and a number of countries have done a lot of work to say to countries in Africa and Latin America and Asia that what's happening in Ukraine is an imperialist war. It's Russia trying to re-establish its old empire, and it should be seen as that. And that's why we ask people in Latin America and Africa and Asia to stand with Ukraine in defending its independence and its democracy and its sovereignty. That gets a lot harder for Ukraine when people in the global south see different standards being applied. And we have to think not just of what's right, but also of Europe's interests in terms of victory in Ukraine and how Russia will exploit what's happening in the Middle East to pursue its imperialist course. And that's a big concern that I have, and a point that I'll strongly be making in Brussels during the week. some of the deputies raised the case of an employee of our former employee of Wix, not aware of the case, don't know the details or the facts, and before coming to any judgment on anything or condemning anyone, I would always wish to know the facts and hear all sides of any case. But certainly under Irish employment law, it is not okay to dismiss somebody because of their political views, and certainly would believe that to be wrong. And I'd encourage the woman concerned to seek advice, whether it's from the WRC or the trade union or a solicitor, because it may well constitute wrongful dismissal. And there are remedies that would then apply. But of course, all the facts would need to be known before we know what the outcome would be. Deputy Durkin talked about the need for one authoritative body. In a world that worked better, the United Nations would be such a body. Unfortunately, we don't have a body that is trusted, accepted and respected by everyone. And that's the real dilemma and the real shame, I think, in the situation. And I think just in relation to the issue of expelling ambassadors and closing embassies, I would say the same as I said when people called for the Russian ambassador to be expelled and the Russian embassy to be closed. Even countries at war have diplomatic relations, have diplomats, have ambassadors, sometimes have embassies. We do need to keep channels of communication open. It'll be of no advantage to Palestine in throwing out the Israeli ambassador. There'll be no advantage to Ukraine in throwing out the Russian ambassador, I don't believe, but it would cut us off. We need to be able to talk to countries, particularly countries where we have citizens and where we have people, and we need to make sure that they're protected.